Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to Suited for War. Last session, we established why the enemy targets marriage. We said it was because covenant carries the image of God and that destroying the covenant destroys the testimony. Tonight, we're going to go inside the home a little bit. We're going to look at what spiritual warfare actually looks like inside relational conflict. Um, we're going to talk about what it looks like, how to recognize it, and how to change your posture when you are in the middle of it. So let's go ahead and open our Bibles to Ephesians chapter 4. And tonight we're going to spend time with verses 26 and 27. That's Ephesians chapter 4, verses 26 and 27. And I'm going to read it before we get started as you're grabbing your pens and notebooks, something to write with and take notes. I am using the Tree of Life version of the Bible, so it may read a little differently than what you have in front of you. But verse 26 and 27 says, "Be angry, yet do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your anger, nor give the devil a foothold." So I pray everyone under the sound of my voice have an open heart and mind as they listen to what is being taught tonight. And Father, I ask you now to encourage them to go deeper than what they're going to learn tonight in this short teaching. All right, let's go ahead and move forward. Again, remember this is a little reprieve from the normal Suited for War teaching, but it's still part of it. I just want to make sure I'm including the topical subjects that you all messaged me about and said that you would like me to cover. So tonight I want you to talk about that. I want you to understand that the real enemy is not your spouse. So remember Ephesians chapter 6 and verse 12, it says that we do not wrestle against flesh and blood. What Ephesians 6 and 12 says that we do argue against is, or wrestle against, I should say, rulers, authorities, powers, and spiritual forces of evil. The enemy in your marriage is not your husband or your wife. It is the one who is working in the space between you. The moment you begin fighting your spouse as if they are the enemy, you have handed the real enemy a victory without firing a single shot. He does not need to defeat you. He needs you to defeat each other. And once you are aimed at each other, he can work completely and undetected. And it is important that you know that. He operates in the space between people. He uses real hurt, real misunderstandings. He uses disappointments, but he amplifies them and redirects them so the target becomes the person standing next to you rather than the one working against the both of you. When you recognize the real enemy, you change the battlefield. You stop fighting across the covenant and start fighting for it, and you start fighting for it together. So again, be angry and do not sin. The first thing I want you to see here is that Paul does not say, do not be angry. You know, there are times when people say being angry is the sin because they feel that you have no self-control, but it's not the anger that speaks to the self-control. It's what you do as a result of the anger that is a sin. So Paul says, be angry and do not sin. So anger is not the problem. Anger in the right direction, righteous anger at what the enemy is doing in your home, that is appropriate. The problem is anger that is misdirected so that that anger, you nurse it or you weaponize it. And that anger is what you're giving ground to. And he's saying, don't give ground to the anger. So the anger isn't what's wrong. It's how you use that anger that results in a sin. And then he goes further, Apostle Paul does. He goes further and he says, do not let the sun go down on your anger. This is not a rule about bedtime. It's a warfare principle. Remember, we're talking about being suited for war. Unresolved anger is an open door. Every night that passes with offense sitting unaddressed is another night the enemy has access to material he can work with. Short accounts close doors, but long accounts, the longer you let offense go on, the longer you remain angry, those long times become strongholds. So we are to give no opportunity to the devil. And the Greek word that is used there is for opportunity. It means don't give a place or a location. Don't give territory to the enemy. Your unresolved conflict gives the enemy a place to stand in your home and a foothold that he did not have before. Footholds become strongholds. And this is why Paul puts it that way. Do not give him location. Do not give him territory, because once he has territory, he is harder to move. So conflict itself is not a problem. You just have to know how to navigate the conflict. So every marriage, every family, every close relationship you have, it has conflict. The question is not whether conflict exists. The question is, what do you do when it arrives? Unresolved conflict is where the enemy builds one offense that gets unaddressed, one wound that gets buried instead of healed, or maybe you have an assumption and then ultimately that assumption becomes a belief that you hold. The enemy does not create these things from nothing. He finds out what is real and he amplifies it. He takes real hurt and he turns it into a pattern. So let's say if you were disappointed about something, he takes that disappointment and he'll turn it into a filter that colors everything. In other words, you're seeing everything through the filter of that disappointment. And the progression is always the same. The offense happens, it goes unaddressed, it becomes bitterness, and then that bitterness becomes a pattern, and then that pattern becomes a stronghold. And by the time the stronghold is visible, the original offense is sometimes decades old. Decades, yes. Every stronghold in a marriage started as one unresolved moment. Remember that. Every stronghold in a marriage started as one unresolved moment. And that is why keeping short accounts is just a good relationship habit. It is spiritual warfare. That is how you fight it. And that's in any relationship, not just your marriage. Because some of you I know listening to this may not even be married, but that is something to use in any relationship, whether it's a family relationship or a friendship, even work relationships. If you're offended, it is best to talk about that offense if you're able. But the most important thing is that you keep it short. You don't hold on to it and allow that bitterness to build. Because while you think you're hurting the person, you're literally hurting yourself by building that stronghold within you. So go ahead and release it. Keep it short, because that is a tool of spiritual warfare. Dishonoring your spouse hinders your prayers. I'm going to say that again. Dishonoring your spouse hinders your prayers. This is not a suggestion about being nice. Again, this is a warfare statement. The health of your covenant directly affects the effectiveness of your intercession for your covenant. You cannot fight on your knees for what you are tearing down with your words. Think about that. I did a lesson on intercession last week, and I said you cannot stand in intercession for your children's future while actively wounding the other parent. So you can't try to stand in intercession for someone, but also bad mouthing them in the next moment. So you cannot pray against a spirit of division in your home while practicing division in your bedroom. The covenant is not separate from your warfare. It is the context of your warfare. And so let's look at what First Peter 3 and 7, it says there. It's addressed to husbands, but the principle applies to both partners. So don't think that only the husband that this relates to. Wives, I want you to also recognize that this is for you as well. Live with your spouse in an understanding way, showing honor because they are co-heirs of the grace of life. The word co-heirs is the key there. They share in the covenant relationship with God. So dishonoring your spouse dishonors someone who carries the grace of God. And that dishonor stops the channel through which your prayers flow. Just think about that. Likewise, husbands or wives, live with your wives or husbands in an understanding way, showing honor to the woman or man since they are heirs with you of the grace of life, so that your prayers may not be hindered. And yes, because it's speaking to the husbands, there is saying that the woman is the weaker vessel. So don't think I'm taking away from the word. I was just showing you how, wives, you are supposed to also show honor towards your husband, just as your husband is to show honor towards you. It's a reciprocal approach. When a small conflict produces a massive response, the response is telling you something. What it's telling you is that there's more underneath. The enemy is working with old wound material to produce outsized reactions to present day situations. When you find yourself having a response that does not match the situation, ask what is underneath it, because that is where the access point is. That is where the enemy enters. It's that unresolved hurt, conflict, wound, offense, whatever it is. If you're overreacting to something that really doesn't bear it doesn't support what the issue is in front of you, you know that there is another underlying issue. So patterns that repeat the same fight in cycles is not just a personality clash. It is a signal that something has not been addressed at the root. You can manage the surface conflict forever and never close the door if you don't deal with what is feeding it. Patterns are also footholds with history. Again, be mindful of these things. Let's talk about withdrawal and silence. Some people think that if they stop fighting, there is peace, but withdrawal is not peace. It is a disconnection. And disconnection is the enemy winning through absence rather than through conflict. Both partners need to be present in the covenant. Silence and withdrawal are not a slower version of the same attack. And now let's talk on attacks on identity. When conflict moves from what you did to who you are, the enemy has upgraded his tactics. Attacking someone's identity, you're calling them something that they are not. You're calling them that they're incapable of doing something or unlovable. Um, you use always and never a lot, like they always behave a certain way or they never do a particular thing. And what that does is it's designed to do damage that outlasts the actual argument. This is not just a marital issue, by the way. It is a spiritual one. You are speaking into someone's sense of who God made them to be. And like I said, this is not just for marriages, this is for any relationship. Any relationship. These same principles can apply. So let's talk about changing your posture in the fight, because this is when we turn. We kind of turn. So before you respond in the next conflict, ask, are we fighting each other or are we fighting together? See, the enemy needs you aimed at each other. Take that away from him. Physically, emotionally, spiritually, turn towards each other and identify the real third party in the room. And then pray out loud together. First Peter 3 and 7, remember, it connects the covenant honor to unhindered prayer. Praying together is one of the most powerful warfare acts a couple or family can practice. When you invite God's presence into the conflict out loud together, you are covering territory the enemy was using. He cannot occupy ground that is active under prayer. He cannot. So then finally, I want you to realize that you have to address the root. What is actually feeding the conflict? Ask yourself that. What is feeding this conflict? Is it bitterness from a specific wound that's there? Is it fear of abandonment? Some of you have rejection challenges going on, or it may be a pattern inherited from your family. Control rooted in past trauma. It could be any of those things, right? These are the access points. You can manage the surface conflict forever. Only addressing the root closes the door. That is the only thing that closes the door. You have to name it, you have to bring it to God, and you have to close what has been open. So now we're going to talk about practical warfare at home. So name the conflict for what it is. Before you fire back in the next argument, I want you to pause and ask, is this a human problem or a spiritual one? We tend to not ask that because we're looking at the person right in front of us. But ask yourself that question. Is this a human problem or a spiritual one? That one question can actually change the entire direction of a conflict. Because if it is spiritual, you didn't understand that your spouse is not the target. You both are targets. And that changes, it should change how you respond. And then the next thing I want you to do is refuse to weaponize your knowledge of your spouse. And I know this one is hard. You know your partner's wounds, you know their fears, their pressure points. The enemy will try to use that knowledge as ammunition in a conflict. So you have to choose not to aim at what you know will wound your spouse. That's actually an act of warfare by not using and not choosing to aim at what you know will hurt your spouse. It refuses the enemy the tools he is trying to hand you. And then, like I said, keep short accounts. Ephesians 4 and 26. Before the day is over, not perfect resolution every time, but a commitment to not leaving things open that will then ultimately become access points. So you want to keep short accounts, and that means small footholds. Long accounts become strongholds, so it is important that you keep them short. And then finally, cover your home in prayer. Habitual, daily, specific prayer before anyone leaves the house, not just when there is a crisis. And that's what we tend to do. We tend to be reactive, but I'm asking you here to use proactive covering. Pray over your spouse, pray over your children. You pray over the atmosphere within your home. You want to know that the conversations that will happen that day, you're praying even over that. You're being proactive. You want to cover it before the enemy finds something to work with. So Ephesians 4 and 3. Be eager to maintain the unity of the Spirit and the bond of peace. It says be eager. That is not passive. That is not something that is waiting for unity to appear on its own. No, what that is actively pursuing it. You're being intentional about protecting that unity of spirit and the bond of peace. The unity of your home is a warfare objective. The enemy knows that a home in unity is a home that is in power, where two or three are gathered, where there is a covenant standing and functioning there. The presence of God is there, and the authority of prayer is there. Divided homes produce divided prayers, and united homes produce unstoppable intercession. So, what God has joined, you are responsible to maintain. You're not just supposed to survive together, you are supposed to actively maintain, meaning to watch over it, to protect it, and to fight for it. You're supposed to actively maintain the unity that God's spirit produces when two people walk together in covenant. So let me talk about this as I close. I have one more slide after this. The enemy has one goal in your home, and that is to separate what God has joined. Stand together and he loses his ground. It is really that simple. I'm not saying it's easy, but it really is that simple. So everything he's doing, every tactic, every conflict, everything, he amplifies, he deepens every wound. He likes to make sure that you all are keeping distance and disengaging. All of it is to serve one purpose, and that is to separate, that is to divide. He wants to make the two flesh, the two people that came together as one flesh. He's trying to make that as two strangers because that breaks covenant. But if you stand together and you face the same direction, you're naming the real enemy and then he loses ground. That is what I want you to get out of this entire thing. And like I said, that goes for any relationship. The next session, we're going to talk about the Song of Solomon, and then we're going to talk about Joel chapter 2. And we talk about how to pray and fight for your marriage and for the family relationships that the enemy has been attacking. So I want you to come ready to discuss those things. That will be the last session in this particular topical series. And then we're going to jump back in the word regarding suited for war, specifically talking about the Bible study on spiritual warfare. So I want to pray over the homes that are represented here. I want to pray against footholds. I want you to name what that foothold is, whether it's unforgiveness, bitterness, whether it's old wounds, any patterns that repeat itself. I want you to, I want to pray against those footholds. And I declare that the homes that are under the sound of my voice are covered under the blood of the covenant. I want to pray that unity be restored where it has been damaged. I pray that each will honor their spouse so that prayers in these homes would not be unhindered. And before I close out today, I want to talk about a master class that is coming up. In this lesson here, I spoke about old wounds. I spoke about bitterness and rejection. I've spoken about feeling abandoned, not having peace. And I've even spoken about maybe that there are some old offenses that is causing you to actually um, have a response greater than what the situation has, excuse me, what the situation has called for. You are so close, but you only come close enough. And because you are close, you have not overcome. So those wounds, those thoughts, that unhealed hurt, those offenses that you're holding on to, that have become your permanent address. And now you are living life through that lens. And it's not just impacting your marriage, it's actually impacting every relationship that you go through. Listen, I was there. I was living life through the lens of my hurt, through the lens of my abandonment and my feelings of rejection, my lens of the spiritual, not the spiritual, but the sexual molestation that I had gone through. I began to navigate life through those wounds. And it took some time for me to recognize it, but I first had to name it. So I want you to name your wound. I want you to join me on Sunday, May 24th for the Rise Masterclass. This class is specifically for women, and it's going to teach women how to stop waiting, how to rise and start walking. This masterclass is going to help you name what is going on. And it is free. It's for one night, but you will leave with a clear picture of what your next step actually is. Some of you ask me, how do you change? I tell you all of that in this masterclass. Come ready to do the work. This is not just going to be me talking. This is going to be you doing the work. Come ready with your Bible, come ready with a pen and, and some paper, because there are some exercises in this masterclass that's going to help you name exactly what it is that has been holding you back and causing you to be paralyzed instead of moving forward in your purpose. Again, that is Sunday, May 24th. The time is 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Go ahead and register or use the QR code there to register. The link is right there as well. It's going to take you straight to the Zoom site to register. Now, some people have already reached out and asked if there would be a replay because of the time differences. And what I need to tell you is that in order for you to receive the replay, you have to register. That's right. Maybe the 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, maybe you are in a totally different country and that time zone does not work for you. It's okay. I will show you the replay so that you can do the exercises and you can name. And I don't want you to miss out on the opportunities that's going to be in that masterclass. But in order for you to receive the replay, I do need you to register, because the replay is only going to be sent to the registrants. And I need to let you know the replay is only going to be for a certain period of time. So go ahead and register, and I will see you on May 24th.